studios. This is Playoff Central Live, presented by AT&T 5G. Here with Isiah Thomas, Steve Smith will be with you for all of the post-game coverage, the coach and player press conferences, as, of course, we'll be looking back at Game 2 and ahead to Game 3. Let's start with what we saw from Giannis, because he was undoubtedly the difference maker.
I saw Giannis do what they wouldn't let Trae Young do.
Yeah.
Get to the middle, get to the paint, dominate in the middle, dominate close to the basket, and he did it from the start of the game. And then he got a little bored and he was like, let me try my three a little bit. But for the most part, he was in the paint, downhill, coming at you, not settling, 2 feet in the paint, putting it on the floor, and that's where he's dangerous at.
Just a dominant performance, Smitty, as I look up and down the box score, dominated in nearly every statistical category.
Yeah, he did, and the Bucks did, and I like what Giannis did. It was not a lot of wasted movement. It was downhill. I'm going to spin. I'm going to get to the rim. But I thought also, I looked at the Milwaukee Bucks. Drew Holiday set the tone for me, Isiah, on the point, guarding Trae Young. Not just because he shut down Trae Young, but when you get up and want to play like 84 feet, close to 94 feet, that's just setting the tone from everybody behind you. I had Mookie Blaylock used to do that. And I'm like, well, I can't let the ball go to the wing if he's going to pressure up. So that gets everybody going. And I thought Drew set the tone today defensively for the entire team.
And then added 22 offensively as well. Isiah, I want to ask you about what you mentioned. They limited Trae Young. They limited his options. Break down what you saw as far as their team's defensive scheme against him in this one.
As we said, when you allow a point guard to play in the middle of the floor, we talk about elbows and boxes. And basically the last game, Trae was able to stay in the middle of the floor. What we see here now is that you see all the defenders are up. Okay, there's no room. He comes off the screen, there's no room. He can't get into the middle of the floor. He can't get to the paint. Now they bring Lopez up. Watch now. Now Lopez was mainly at the rim, but now Trae, once he gets into the lane, they took down the middle, they shrunk the middle of the floor. He wasn't able to get into the paint. He wasn't allowed. And when he got distance into the paint, those long arms, big enough, made him shut down his passing lanes, and so they were constantly putting pressure on Trae. And that's what you want to do to a point guard. You never want to let a point guard play in the middle of the floor. They kept him on the side of the floor. As you see now, he's taking the angles and he got to go to the side of the floor. He is outside of the elbows. And those forced turnovers, those big arms, long arms, up on them, taking away the middle of the floor, that's what you have to do if you want to contain Trae Young. You want to have to keep him outside of the middle of the floor, keep him away from those elbows and boxes inside, and make him play on the side of the floor. Now when he plays on the side of the floor, and trust me, I know, you don't want to be on the side of the floor when a big guy like Lopez or Mikal and them are smothering you, because the sideline is also a defender too. So those big guys can get up on you, take away your space, and that's why we little guys, we like to stay in the middle, because when you get on the sideline, now they can pressure you with that outside defender in terms of the sideline, push you down to the baseline. The baseline is another defender. So that's what they were able to do to Trae, and that's how they were effective, and consequently they got 9 turnovers.
So typically the three of us will have a quick conversation either during commercial breaks or right before we come on the air, and we'll talk about what we're about to talk about to all of you. And when I asked you, Smitty, what you wanted to talk about, you said Bobby Portis. Why? Energy.
I mean, I thought he just had the crowd into the game, Isiah. Numbers won't jump out at you, but I just think for him, his mobility as a big, it fits this series. Bobby had that look where he came out and played. He got the steal, attacking the rim. He was mic'd up. He was yelling. He was screaming. And I just like the way he played, because he's one of those guys, he's knocking down the three, but he likes to play physical on both ends. And then also he can move his feet. He can switch out on some guards and not play on the entire 24-second shot clock, but maybe 5 or 6 seconds, a couple dribbles. And that's what I like about Bobby Portis. When you have a guy that's bringing that type of energy, it's contagious and everybody gets going.
Who then can be or should be that guy for the Hawks as this series shifts back to Atlanta?
Well, you got to find a way now to free up Trae and get him back in the middle of the floor. What Milwaukee was successful at doing now defensively is they took him out of the middle of the floor, and they took Capella out of the middle of the floor. So the lob, penetration that we saw and that we were used to seeing Trey and Capella execute, they wasn't able to do that tonight because the middle was closed down. So what they got to do now, Atlanta, is they got to find some way to move Trey around, get him moving off of baseline screens, then he can catch the basketball, penetrate, get into the middle of the floor. But if you're just having him come down now and try to get into the middle of the floor, they've cut that off successfully tonight. Will they be able to do that in Atlanta? We'll see.
Do you agree that it starts and finishes with Trae Young in this series?
It does, and I think he also needs some help. I think John Collins can be that energy guy for them. I think also, unfortunately, Bogdanovich is struggling with that knee, Isaiah, because he's the one guy I think, Kristen, that can handle the basketball, make some plays for himself, also be able to handle and get the basketball to Trae if he ran off screen. So maybe it's Cam Reddish, maybe it's Chris Dunn. I'm not sure, but they got to find somebody else that can break down the defense just to take the load off Trae, because right now they are loading up on Trae. Drew Holiday's putting pressure. Lopez is not in drop. He was up a little bit, and I think they're bringing the guy on the opposite side all the way over and daring them to make that skip pass all the way over. So they're shrinking the court on the Hawks and Trae Young.
And again, Kristen Smitty, I know this from being a small guy. When the big guys, when they start huffing and puffing and moving around out on the floor and they extend their arms, it normally when I can beat you in one dribble, but when Lopez and those guys put those arms out and they long, okay, now I got to take 2 to 3 dribbles going east or west. But when you got your arms down and I can go north or south off of one dribble, that's easy. But when they spread out and I got to take them extra dribbles, that is difficult for me.
Right, well, because they're not only limiting his options, they're limiting his vision of the court as well, which is one of the things that makes Trae as successful as he is.
Yeah, and then when they put their arms up, okay, those passes aren't as, those passes are up in the air, therefore the defense can help him recover. Can't make just, bullet passes. And by the way, sometimes when they would come down, they would just hit you.
It was louder for us than it may have come across on the screen. But for those of you who are joining us for our post-game coverage, let's go ahead and get to the highlights.